Imagine a world where every single engine, everywhere, just stopped, no warning, no explanation, just sudden, absolute silence. What would happen the very next second? First, the skies would fall, thousands of planes, from commercial jets to tiny drones, would plunge to Earth. Over 1.5 million people in the air at any given moment would have no chance. On the ground, billions of vehicles would become instant, immovable metal blocks. Freeways would turn into parking lots of death traps. Every journey would end abruptly, violently for some. The power grid? Gone. Most electricity relies on turbine generators, driven by engines. Lights would vanish, computers would die, modern society's nervous system would flatline in moments. What if you were in surgery? Or on life support? Hospitals would become silent tombs, ventilators, incubators, dialysis machines, all dead. The most vulnerable would be the first to go. Water pumps? Engines, no running water. Cities would dry up within days. Imagine millions scrambling for hydration in a modern desert. How long could you last? Communication would vanish. No cell towers, no internet servers, no satellites. The global conversation would end. We'd be disconnected, isolated, utterly alone in our immediate surroundings. But what nobody expected was the complete collapse of our most vital systems. Food production and distribution would halt. Trucks, tractors, processing plants, all silent. Supermarkets would empty in hours. Cities, once beacons of progress, would become death traps. No transport, no sanitation, no law enforcement. Millions trapped, with no way out. The concrete jungle would turn truly wild. And then there's the silence, the profound, unsettling silence. No hum of electricity, no distant traffic. What if the world just quieted down completely? It would be deafening. Waste management, dependent on trucks and machinery, would cease. Garbage would pile up. Diseases, long suppressed, would make a terrifying comeback. Typhoid, cholera, dysentery. With no medicine factories, no transport for supplies, and compromised hygiene, epidemics would sweep the globe. The few remaining doctors would be helpless. A silent killer would stalk the land. The search for food and clean water would become the sole purpose of life. People would forage, hunt, and steal. Basic human decency would erode under the pressure of starvation. We haven't even gotten to the most shocking part yet. How human nature itself would be tested. Despair, loneliness, and fear would become constant companions. The psychological toll would be immense. Survival would depend heavily on location. Rural communities with self-sustaining skills would fare better. City dwellers, reliant on complex systems, would face unimaginable hardship. What about the forgotten infrastructure? Unmonitored nuclear reactors, gas lines, chemical plants, without active cooling and maintenance. These would become ticking time bombs, unleashing new disasters. Without modern heating or cooling systems, the elements would become deadly. Winter would claim millions. Summer heat waves would be equally lethal, especially without clean water. Here's the part that changes everything: the mental and emotional toll. The grief for a lost world, for lost loved ones, would be a constant, heavy burden. What would be left of our spirit? What if bears roamed city streets? Nature would quickly reclaim. Animals would wander into deserted towns. The wild would return with astonishing speed, adapting to the silent, empty spaces we left behind. Out of the chaos, a tiny percentage would survive. They would be the resourceful, the resilient, those with pre-industrial skills. About 5% of humanity, maybe less, would remain. Old skills, long forgotten, would become vital. Farming without machinery, crafting tools by hand, navigating by stars. Humanity would relearn how to live without the convenience of engines. Community and cooperation would be paramount. Small, localized groups would form, relying on each other for protection, food, and knowledge. Trust would be the new currency. New forms of transport would emerge: horses, bicycles, even walking. what if humanity reverted to horse-drawn carts? The pace of life would slow dramatically, dictated by muscle and wind. The world would be profoundly changed, nature would heal, skies would clear, but human population would be decimated. A new era, harsh and unforgiving, would begin for the survivors. And then it got much worse. As the true cost of survival became clear, what if the price of survival was forgetting who we were? The memory of the old world would fade, replaced by a brutal present. This isn't just a story about engines stopping, it's about our utter dependence on technology. It's a lesson in resilience, adaptation, and the raw, unyielding power of human spirit. The survivors would rebuild, not with engines, but with ingenuity and grit. They would learn to live in harmony with a quieter planet, forever marked by the Great Silence. So, what would happen? 95% of people wouldn't survive, but the remaining few would forge a new world. What skills do you have if the engines stop tomorrow? Think about it.